But what we need to talk to Merce about now is what happened at the Emirates today.
Arsenal's training ground has rarely felt this electric. From the moment Sandro Tonali and Julián Álvarez stepped onto the pitches at London Colney, the tempo changed, the noise rose, and the intensity jumped several levels. This wasn't just another first session for new signings easing themselves into a new environment. This felt like a statement. A warning. A glimpse of what Mikel Arteta is trying to build as Arsenal push toward the next phase of their evolution. Tonali, arriving from Newcastle, immediately looked like a player who belongs at the heart of an elite midfield. There was no hesitation in his play, no sense of needing time to settle. He demanded the ball, dictated rhythm, and constantly scanned his surroundings, positioning himself perfectly to receive and release possession. In tight spaces, he was calm and precise. When the game opened up, he switched play with authority. His communication stood out just as much as his technique, constantly organizing those around him and setting standards in every drill. Watching him operate alongside Martin Ødegaard and Eberechi felt natural, almost seamless, as if the trio had been playing together for months rather than minutes. What made Tonali's performance even more striking was his physical edge. Training drills were sharp and aggressive, yet he matched the intensity stride for stride, pressing high, snapping into challenges, and recovering possession with purpose. This was not a player easing his way in, this was a midfielder taking ownership from day one. Coaches watched closely as he led transitions, turning defensive recoveries into quick attacks, and it became clear why Arteta pushed so hard to bring him in. Arsenal have been searching for control, balance, and authority in midfield, and Tonali's presence hinted at exactly that. If Tonali brought structure and control, Julián Álvarez brought chaos in the best possible way. Signed from Atlético Madrid, the Argentine forward looked like a nightmare for defenders from the opening drill. His movement was relentless, constantly darting between lines, pulling markers out of position, and pressing with an intensity that set the tone for the entire session. Every small-sided game felt sharper when he was involved. Every defensive lapse was punished. Álvarez's finishing was ruthless. One-touch strikes, quick turns, shots taken early before goalkeepers could set themselves. He showed a striker's instinct that can't be coached. Yet it wasn't just goals that impressed. His work rate without the ball was relentless, harassing defenders, forcing mistakes, and triggering counter-presses that kept Arsenal on the front foot. In combination play, his chemistry with Ødegaard and was instantly eye-catching, with quick exchanges, clever layoffs, and constant rotation that left defenders guessing. What truly lifted the session was how naturally Álvarez fit into Arteta's pressing system. He didn't just chase for the sake of it, he pressed intelligently, cutting off passing lanes and forcing play into traps. That tactical discipline, combined with his explosive movement and finishing, made him stand out even among a squad packed with quality. It's easy to see why Arsenal view him as a forward who can elevate their attack in the biggest moments. As the session progressed, the mood around the training ground shifted from curiosity to excitement. Players on the sidelines watched closely. Coaches exchanged glances. The intensity never dropped. With Tonali anchoring the midfield and Álvarez leading the press, Arsenal looked sharper, faster, and more purposeful. The link-up between midfield and attack felt more fluid, more dangerous, and more unpredictable. Eberechi's role in the session added another layer of intrigue. Operating between the lines, he thrived off the movement around him, drifting into pockets of space created by Álvarez's runs and Tonali's forward passes. Ødegaard, as ever, was the conductor, but now with even more options at his disposal. The triangles formed effortlessly, the ball moving quicker, the ideas clearer. It felt like a system clicking into place. Of course, it's only training. No trophies are won on the first day at London Colney. But football clubs are built on patterns, habits, and standards, and this session hinted at a squad raising all three. The hunger was obvious. The competition for places was intense. Every drill was contested, every mistake punished, every moment treated seriously. That atmosphere doesn't happen by accident, it's driven by players who raise the level the moment they arrive. For Arsenal fans, this first glimpse was intoxicating. Social media buzzed almost instantly, with clips, reactions, and bold predictions flooding timelines. Supporters have been waiting for signings that don't just add depth but change the dynamic of the team, and Tonali and Álvarez look capable of doing exactly that. One brings control, leadership, and balance. The other brings aggression, movement, and goals. Together, they hint at a side ready to impose itself both domestically and in Europe. The feeling around London Colney after that session was not just excitement, it was belief. There was a sense that Arsenal are no longer merely preparing for the season ahead, but actively shaping an identity designed to dominate. Every drill, every pause in play, every short conversation between players carried extra weight. This was the type of training environment that reflects ambition, not maintenance. And at the heart of it all were two players who looked like they had been waiting for this moment their entire careers. Tonali's influence continued to grow as the session wore on. In longer tactical exercises, his understanding of space became even more evident. He constantly adjusted his positioning to offer an outlet, dropping deep when needed and pushing forward to support attacks at exactly the right moment. There was no wasted movement, no rushed decision-making. Younger players naturally gravitated toward him, following his cues, trusting his judgment. That kind of authority can't be taught, it's earned through experience and mentality. What stood out most was how quickly Tonali absorbed instructions. Arteta and his staff were vocal throughout, tweaking pressing angles, defensive shapes, and build-up patterns. Tonali responded instantly, making adjustments on the fly and helping others understand their roles. It was the behavior of a player who doesn't just execute a plan, but understands the reasoning behind it. In one sequence, he cut out a passing lane, regained possession, and immediately switched play with a perfectly weighted pass that ignited an attack, drawing quiet nods of approval from the coaching staff. As fatigue began to creep in, Tonali's consistency never dipped. If anything, he looked more comfortable the longer the session went on. That durability, both physical and mental, is exactly what Arsenal have been craving in the center of the pitch. He didn't shy away from duels, didn't disappear when intensity rose. Instead, he embraced it, setting a tempo that others were forced to match. Álvarez, meanwhile, continued to terrorize defenders in a completely different way. In finishing drills, he was ruthless. Shots came early, often before defenders or goalkeepers expected them. He mixed power with placement, instinct with intelligence. One moment he was ghosting into the box to tap home a rebound, the next he was drifting wide to create space for a late run from midfield. His unpredictability made him almost impossible to mark. But perhaps the most impressive element of Álvarez's performance was his mentality. Missed chances didn't frustrate him, they fueled him. Every failed attempt was followed by an immediate reaction, sharper movement, more aggression, higher intensity. He demanded more from himself and those around him. You could hear him urging teammates to press higher, to move quicker, to take risks. This was not a forward content with simply finishing moves, this was a player obsessed with controlling the game from the front. In possession-based drills, Álvarez's link-up play added a new dimension to Arsenal's attack. He dropped deep to receive the ball, dragged defenders with him, and opened lanes for runners beyond him. When Ødegaard found pockets of space, Álvarez was always nearby, ready for a quick exchange. He's thrived in this environment, using his close control and creativity to exploit gaps created by constant movement ahead of him. The combinations were fast, sharp, and fluid, exactly the type of football Arteta has been striving to perfect. As the session moved into match simulation phases, the competitive edge became even clearer. Tackles flew in. Duels were contested with real intensity. Nobody wanted to lose. Tonali's presence ensured Arsenal remained balanced even when attacks broke down, while Álvarez's relentless pressing meant opponents were never allowed to settle. The contrast between control and chaos worked beautifully, giving Arsenal a dual threat that felt genuinely intimidating. The body language across the squad told its own story. Players on the fringes pushed harder. Established starters raised their level. Competition for places suddenly felt real, and that's exactly what elite teams thrive on. No one could afford to drift through drills. Every mistake was punished, every success acknowledged. The standard had been raised. From the sidelines, Arteta looked engaged, animated, and quietly satisfied. This was the type of session that validates months of planning and recruitment. Arsenal haven't just signed talented individuals, they've added players who fit the philosophy, the intensity, and the mentality required to compete at the highest level. Tonali and Álvarez looked like natural extensions of Arteta's vision, not adjustments to it. Please like this video and subscribe.